Hello, brethren. What a wonderful afternoon. I take this wonderful chance. I'm going to reflect on the modern day scandals. And I'm going to reflect in depth. It's called internal reflection. What if you had a cure to heal the modern day scandals over time? What would be your best approach? How will you do it? So the question we're going to enrich and try to identify the modern day scandals. And we see them, we identify them, and we are going to look in the eyes of God versus the eyes of men and how God sees the world in our time. So let's take a sample of the modern day scandals. We go back in the Old Testament, we see like the great prophet Isaiah. In his days, there was bloodshed. There was bloodshed. That we can call it a scandal of his time. There was, in the time of prophet Jeremiah, there was false prophets. In the time of prophet Elijah, there were false prophets. And idolatry was rampant in the land of Israel. So let's come to modern time. The greatest scandals of our time are bloodshed, violence, exploitation of the poor by the power of society. We have witnessed with our naked eyes. Naked eyes. We have seen wars. We have seen bloodshed. We have seen influx of people into refugee camps and men imposing their will on their fellow men. That is the greatest scandal of our time. What would be the best antidote of such a scandal? That's a question. If we had a cure for such, what would we do? And that's what Hosea was asking. There's so much bloodshed and bloodshed. What happens when there's so much bloodshed? What happens when there's lawlessness? You go back in the book of Genesis 6:11, it says, Behold, the whole world was lawless. Huh? What was happening? Whatever man did was nothing than evil. Look to the city of Nineveh. What did God look at? What was happening in that city? People did not know right from wrong. There was violence. There was all kinds of wickedness. Look at Sodom and Gomorrah. So there were scandals of their time, the scandals of immorality. There was sodomy and immorality in the land of Sodom and Gomorrah. That is the scandals we talk about. What are the scandals we have witnessed in our time? Starting from the year 2002, we saw the greatest massive assault done to the church and the exploitation. And what we saw is the scandals of immorality and the exploitation of the disadvantaged of the church. This moved my spirit. I started praying for the church. I even remember by 2014, I cried and cried to God, and I was seeking God's divine intervention in our time to come in aid for the church. That was a spirit that moves the spirit of God. God was mourning. We see God mourning in our time. Yes. If you take a sample like the Catholic Church of our time, see the church selling properties, schools, and all that. That is a scandal of our time. Not only violence, not only sexual immorality, then how about the bigger society? And then we start to invoke who? The Spirit, the Spirit, the Spirit, the Spirit of God. What does the Spirit of God do? The sons and daughters of Israel, when they were in the land of Egypt, what did they seek? God. And that's when God calls Moses and says, The cries of my people have reached to me. And God says, Go and deliver my people. Where? The land of Egypt. Same scandals over time have reached the heavens. And God has done what? Has remembered our days. That's why we see our time. The hand of God has come upon the heart. Men over time may underestimate the power of God. God is not a God you can underestimate. His power transcends from his glory, from glory to glory. His spirit descends from his temple, holy temple, his spirit of fire. Imagine the great prophet Elijah praying. He prayed for divine intervention. Divine intervention is only invoked when humanity abandons the divine. When humanity abandons the divine. We see that throughout history. And it's self evident that men abandon what is rightful to the Lord, what we call divine providence. Divine providence, where man has to acknowledge the power of God. God is a foreseer. God is all knowing. God is the creator, is the grand architecture of the universe. So, brethren, we imagine in our time, we are not different. We are not different. Nowhere. Not different from the days of these great prophets. We are not different from the great days of these great scandals, whether you go back in the building of the Tower of Babel, whether you go into ancient Egypt, whether you go to ancient Babylon, whether you go to the great Roman Empire. All those things happened because it's the same God. Scandals were there and they continue to exist into our modern time. So we are not exempt. There is no law of exemption. There is no law of exemption. When humanity goes beyond the limit, God intervenes. When God intervenes, humanity cries to the living God. It is the hand of the Almighty. It has been invoked, the Spirit, the Spirit, the Spirit of God. In our days, as we continue to ponder through the scandals and preparation of our time, but we remember there is a God whose statutes are eternal and forever. As we fence the giants, the mountains, Jesus says, if you have faith, faith, even a small faith, you can even tell the mountains to move, and they will move. It shall wear the shield of faith. You carry your faith. The word. We proclaim the word because it's the eternal word of the Lord. So, brethren, when we examine the scandals themselves, there are many scandals. There are many scandals of our time. And our challenge now is not to fear the scandals of our time, is to invoke the Spirit of God. The sons of Israel were in Egypt. What did they do? They invoked the Spirit of God. Their tears and sorrows and pain was heard in heaven. When Sodom and Gomorrah was wicked, God looked from above. When in Genesis the man became lawless, God looked from above. So there is no greater scandal ever without a cure. We must heal the wounds of our time. We must heal the scandals of our time. We must rise above the scandals of our time and be the saints of our time. Sometimes, many years back, I used to think I need to be a saint. Today, the way I see sainthood is not about wanting to be a saint. I want to exemplify my life in the time that I live. I want to do the things in my time that will exemplify the time that we live. Whatever remains, remains to God. You only get the reward at the end of your journey. That's what Paul says. I learn a less, but I learn a good less. All I was waiting is the crown of glory. So, my friends and my brethren, let's not be worried about our time. Our time are in line with the timeline of God. There's nothing different, nothing new under the planet heart, which is indivisible to the living God. There's no greater power and no greater love that God has shown that He sent His only Son. John 3:16 says, for God loved the whole world that He sent His only Son. Whoever who believes in Him may not die, but will get eternal life. May God bless you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And we may go in peace as we go to conquer the scandals of our time and heal our world and bring eternal beauty to a better world. Brethren, be safe.